Hi class, my name is Elizabeth Duvall and I read The Forest People by Colin Turnbull. It was a great ethnography. It was super interesting. Um, it's about the pygmies of the Congo, specifically the Bambuti people of the Ituri forest, and they're living in the forest with some Bantu villages on the outskirts that they're affiliated with and definitely patronize. But the pygmies that he's working with specifically, there's 4 families, and then there's another pygmy group that lives kind of on the outskirts of that pygmy group, and that's another few families. And they just live with groups large enough to hunt with, and pygmies can kill elephants with their bare hands. They're very skilled hunters, and they're very, very much the professionals of the rainforest. It was crazy to read about their life in the forest and super interesting, especially as Colin Turnbull, who lived with them, participated in every aspect of their life. But so this was written in the 50s. He visited once in 51 and then returned in 54 for 3 years. Going into this, because it was written in the 50s and because it was written in Africa and it was I don't know, it seemed like it would be more along the lines of Evans Pritchard. It seemed like the 50s kind of would have been pre-paradigm shift in the anthropological world. But it was much more similar to China's. And in respect to China's, it was written more in that style, like a journal kind of, like a narrative, just saying what happened and having no really, I don't know, no like structure behind it. I mean, there's definitely a structure, but it's not like Evans Pritchard going in there and recording things and kind of, I don't know, messing with things to kind of get the information that he wants and wants to view things but doesn't really participate in anything, more of an outsider perspective. So Turnbull is writing like a journal, like everyone is his close friend, and he was living in very close quarters with everyone, and for a long time, hunting with them, participating in ceremonies, definitely became one of the guys. At one point in the book, one of my favorite parts was when the African village on the outskirts of the forest sent over kind of like their chief's daughter, and essentially wanted Turnbull to be attracted to her, to marry her. They sent over a few, and his friend Kenji asked him who he thought was the most attractive, and anyways, it was just a funny little tale that he had. But yeah, it's very different from Evans Pritchard. It read a lot differently, but it was a great thing to read after reading that because it talks about all the witchcraft and the tribes on the outskirts and how the tribes view the pygmies because the pygmies don't believe in the witchcraft, and the pygmies will actually use that against them, and they'll go and they'll trick the tribes, and like I said, they kind of patronize the villages. So the pygmies will go and bring meat to the village, and in return they get rice or plantains or cigarettes or wine, and they have a couple of stories they're telling with each other one night outside the fire, and the story is something like I think it's Kolokamo. He is supposed to bring meat to like his villager. They all kind of like have someone who takes care of them. And he says, oh, like a bad spirit got me, a bad spirit took the meat, blah, blah, blah. And so the African villager feels bad for him and gives him extra rice and extra plantains and extra supplies. And so they kind of use the witchcraft against them and kind of try and outsmart them. But in comparison with Basso, 5 minutes are going really quick here. In comparison with Basso, they're so affiliated with their place. Their culture is completely revolving around the forest, and the forest is their mother, the forest is their father, the forest is their brother, is their sister, but the forest is good. And the only ritual activity that they participate in, and there's quite a few, but they all revolve around the forest, and they all have to do with the forest, and that's totally contradictory to the witchcraft. That's um, the main belief everywhere else. They attribute anything good to the forest being happy with them and anything bad to the forest being mad at them. And so their rituals are hyper focused on the forest and all about making the forest happy. Um, but yeah, just to kind of wrap it up, really good, really interesting. I definitely like the fact that it read more like a narrative and more like, I don't know, such a close insider perspective than we read in Evans Pritchard, and even in Basso, but Basso I really did like. But yeah, very interesting. It doesn't go into as much the linguistic side of stuff that Basso did, but definitely the affiliation with place is emphasized. And you just kind of get a sense of, I don't know, the shift that's going on within the culture. And this is also similar to Basso. The elders, want everything to remain in the forest, and the young people want to go play in the village with, all the things that the village gets from Camp Putnam. And the young adults want to go drink in the village, and so there's a lot of problems with alcoholism emerging, and it's definitely an interesting time to be writing ethnography in the Congo. But yeah, The Forest People, Colin Turnbull, excellent read.